He conquered the world before turning 30, but his greatest enemy was his own dream. This is the story of Alexander the Great, the man who tried to become a god and paid the price for it. Born in 356 BC in the city of Pella, Macedonia, Alexander was destined for greatness. His father, King Philip II, was a brilliant warrior and a ruthless ruler. His mother, Olympias, was proud, ambitious, and filled her son's head with prophecy. She told him, "You are not like other men, Alexander. You are the son of Zeus." From that moment, the young boy believed he was born to rule the world. At 13, his father hired a teacher, the greatest philosopher in Greece, Aristotle. Under the shade of olive trees, Aristotle taught him about logic, science, and war. He showed him maps of lands far beyond Greece, India, Persia, Egypt, and told him, all knowledge begins with wonder. But for Alexander, that wonder became obsession. He didn't just want to learn the world, he wanted to own it. Then, in 336 BC, tragedy struck. King Philip was assassinated, stabbed to death at his own wedding. Some whispered that Olympias was behind it. Others said it was revenge by a rival. But when the blood dried, one thing was certain. 20-year-old Alexander was now king. The world saw a young prince. Alexander saw an empire waiting to be born. He moved quickly. He crushed rebellions across Greece, burning cities that resisted him. And then he turned his gaze east, toward the greatest empire of all time, Persia. The Persian Empire ruled millions, stretching from Turkey to India. But Alexander didn't flinch. He marched with just 40,000 men. At the Battle of Granicus, victory. At Issus, victory again. At Gaugamela, the impossible. Against an army 5 times larger, Alexander led a lightning charge straight into the heart of the Persian line. King Darius fled the field. The Persian Empire was his. In a breathtakingly short span of time, Alexander the Great carved out an empire that dwarfed all others. His conquests stretched from the familiar shores of Greece to the ancient sands of Egypt, and across the vast Persian heartland to the very edges of India. The speed and scale of his victories were unprecedented, leaving the world in awe. Whispers turned to proclamations, and soon, a new title echoed across his domain, King of Kings. It was a testament to a dominion larger than any single man had ever ruled. But a worldly title was not enough. When he marched into Egypt, he was welcomed as a liberator. At the remote Siwa oasis, the oracle of Amun, a god the Greeks equated with their own Zeus, gave him a new name, a divine affirmation. They called him the Son of God. At first, it was merely a political title, a way to legitimize his rule over the Egyptians. But the idea took root in his soul. Slowly, the line between man and myth began to blur, and Alexander started to believe it himself. He began adopting foreign customs, demanding his men perform proskynesis, bowing before him as the Persians did for their kings. To his fiercely proud Macedonians, this was an outrage. Bowing was an act reserved for the gods. They had followed a brilliant general, a leader of men, not a deity. The first cracks in their loyalty began to show, but Alexander was no longer a man chasing victory. He was chasing divinity, and he would not let the traditions of mortals stand in his way. But for Alexander, conquering the known world was not enough. His hunger for glory, for knowledge, for the very limits of existence, was insatiable. He became obsessed with a singular, mythical goal, to march his army to what the Greeks called the ends of the earth, the fabled ocean that supposedly encircled the world. This was more than a campaign. It was a pilgrimage to the edge of reality itself, a quest to see what no Greek had ever seen. For 3 grueling years, his army pushed eastward, crossing treacherous deserts, forging raging rivers, and scaling the formidable Hindu Kush mountains. They weren't just fighting enemy armies, they were battling the planet itself. They fought relentless storms, rampant disease, and a soul-crushing exhaustion that frayed their discipline and their loyalty. Many began to wonder if their king was leading them to glory or to their graves. And then, at the banks of the river Hydaspes in modern-day Pakistan, Alexander faced his greatest challenge yet. On the far side, waiting for him, was the army of King Porus. Porus was a king as proud and fearless as Alexander himself, and his army possessed a terrifying secret weapon, 200 war elephants armored and arranged like living fortresses. The Macedonians, who had conquered every foe with spear and shield, had never seen anything like these creatures. They were titans of flesh and fury. The battle that followed was a vision of hell. Thunder and torrential rain turned the field into a quagmire of mud and blood. The trumpeting of elephants mixed with the screams of men. Alexander's veterans were terrified, their formations broken by the charging beasts. But as his army wavered, Alexander charged forward, a god in mortal form, refusing to bleed, refusing to lose. After 8 hours of brutal, relentless fighting, the Indian army finally broke. Porus, fighting to the last, was captured, and Alexander, so impressed by his enemy's courage, spared his life and his kingdom, earning a powerful new ally. But the victory at the Hydaspes River was a hollow one, a triumph that came at a staggering price. The battle had been the costliest of his entire campaign. Thousands of his men, the hardened veterans who had followed him from Macedonia, now lay dead on the blood-soaked Indian soil. The spirit of the invincible Macedonian army was broken. So when Alexander, still driven by his insatiable ambition, ordered them to march deeper into the vast unknown lands of India, his soldiers refused. This was not a debate, it was a mutiny. For a decade they had followed him to the edge of the known world. They had crossed scorching deserts and frozen mountains, conquered empires and amassed unimaginable wealth. But they were homesick, weary, and had nothing left to give their king. His most trusted general, Conus, spoke for them all, begging him to turn back. For 3 days, Alexander secluded himself in his tent, fuming with rage and disbelief. But the army would not yield. For the first time in his life, Alexander the Great bowed to someone else's will. He wept, not for the defeat of his will, but because his dream had reached its limit. He had reached the end, not of the world, but of his men's loyalty. The march home was a new kind of hell. Choosing a perilous route through the Gedrosian desert, thousands more perished. Hunger, disease, and relentless heat claimed the lives of men who had survived countless battles. Alexander watched his empire begin to crumble from within. The once mighty conqueror, who had commanded absolute obedience, now saw rebellion, exhaustion, and fear in the eyes of his own people. The cracks in his vast creation were beginning to show. By the time he reached Babylon, he was only 32, but his body was failing. Fever struck him. Some say it was poison, others, a divine punishment. For days he lay in his palace, surrounded by his generals.
When they asked, "Who will rule after you?" he whispered, "To the strongest."
And then, silence. The greatest conqueror in history was gone. But what had driven him all these years? Was it glory? Was it power? Or something deeper? Alexander's true ambition was not just to rule the world, it was to unite it. He dreamed of blending East and West, of creating one world, one people, under one destiny. He ordered his soldiers to marry Persian women. He began training Persians as equals to Greeks. He envisioned an empire without borders. But his vision came too early. The world was not ready. After his death, his generals tore the empire apart. The dream of unity vanished into dust. And yet, his name never died. From Rome to Napoleon, from Caesar to modern generals, Alexander's tactics, his courage, his vision, still inspire those who dream too big. He became a symbol of ambition, of genius, and of tragedy. He conquered the known world, but he could not conquer himself. More than 2,000 years later, his statues still stand. His cities still bear his name. And his story still reminds us of the thin line between greatness and madness. Alexander wanted to be immortal, and in a way, he succeeded. Because as long as people dream of glory, as long as ambition burns in the hearts of men, the name Alexander the Great will never be forgotten. This was Alexander the Great's secret ambition. You're watching History and War Stories. Subscribe for more epic untold history documentaries.